Okay, 6 o'clock.
Okay, so we filled it up.
Rise and shine.
We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Tappan, can I have a roll call, please?
Chair Hayward,
Here.
Vice Chair Smith,
Here.
Tony Spina,
Here.
Eric Stun,
Here.
Robert DeWitt,
Here.
Phil Marshall.
Here.
Okay, all present. So I guess next is approve the approval of agenda.
I make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll support it. We have a motion and support. All in favor? Aye. And then next up is the approval for the minutes. And we're going to do two different groups of minutes. The April minute, we're going to do the April minutes first. That would probably be suitable. Anybody have any corrections or changes, typos on the April 12th, 2018 minutes?
Hearing nothing from my fellow members, I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
I support it.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. And then the June.
Let's
Do a vote on that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I can leave now, I did something.
Next we'll do the approval for the June. Oh, wait. Yeah.
June 14th.
Yeah, June 14th. June 14th minutes. Thank you. Good call.
Hearing no comments from my fellow board members, I make a motion that they approve as presented.
Support. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So the first up is we have two cases, pretty close, similar to the same thing. Yeah. Just a second, 1 minute. Yeah, so moving on, public hearing, case number 18-3, applicant Allison and Keith Kuchenbecker? Kuchenbecker. Parcel address is 3040 Honeybee Lane, Oxford, Michigan. Parcel is 05.30.200.013. Parcel size is 2.61 acres. Zone suburban farms. The hearing, the applicant seeks a dimensional variance for the Township of Addison Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, Addison Township Zoning Ordinance. The applicant requests a variance for placement of a 36 by 20 by 13 foot accessory structure completely in the front yard. With regards to 4.21.2b, Article 4, Section 4.21.2b states accessory buildings in the A, RE, SE, and SF districts, unless specifically provided for otherwise elsewhere in this ordinance, accessory buildings in the A, RE, SE, and SF districts shall be subject to the following regulations. An accessory building located in the RE, SE, or SF district shall meet the minimum yard setback requirements of the district in which the accessory building or structure is located and shall not be located in the front yard. Okay. At this point, we're opening up, we have a public hearing. We'd like to...
Mr. Chair, before you open the public hearing, can I just speak for a second?
Absolutely.
As you know, I'm a township attorney, and I'm here tonight to work on these matters with you and just offer some reminders as we continue our ongoing learning and training with respect to procedures and whatnot. And so that the public knows and the applicant knows, this one is a public hearing. And if you want to look at it in terms of a box, we're going to create a box which is going to be the public hearing record. And we're going to hear from the applicant, and then we're going to hear from the public. And just so you know, the ZBA will then have a record, and the decision that they make has to be based on the record. And so we're going to exhaust time tonight to establish a full record. And so we will be asking the applicant over and over, do you have anything else to add to the record? Because we don't want you to think of something later when the record is closed because we can't reopen the public hearing. So we're going to want to get all the information as you guys normally do. And normally we do not make a decision on the night of the public hearing. You guys push it off till the next month, wherein you have time to consider the record, and then you deliberate and make a decision at the next meeting. So I don't want the applicant to feel that the ZBA is being rude or not attentive in any way, but it's not a dialogue during the public hearing. It's a one-way communication. During the public hearing, they listen to what's being presented. When the public hearing is closed, some of these members may have some follow-up questions for the applicant, but the public hearing part will be closed. And again, the public hearing is a flow of information to the board, not a flow of information or questions from the board back to the applicant or to the members of the public. So don't be offended, members of the public or applicant, if the ZBA doesn't comment. They're not going to respond to questions during the public hearing. They're just going to receive the information. And if you have written materials, we're going to ask that they be entered and made an official part of the record by tendering them to the chairman, who will then give them to the esteemed minute taker and record keeper. So remember, that's what we're going to do, and let's go ahead, Mr. Chair, and open this public hearing.
Okay. So at this time, Mr. Kuchenbecker, if you'd like to, or Mrs. Kuchenbecker, if you want to just elaborate a little bit what you're proposing to do.
Well, basically, we need to put a garage on the property because, as you referred to the winters, it gets pretty bad, and unfortunately, the way our property is set up, the only logical place is, well, it's not in front of the property, but, well, it's adjacent. And that's the only way we wouldn't end up in the pond
Gotcha.
to be able to use it. Because if we went anywhere on either side of the house or behind, nice icy winter would put us right into our pond, because that takes up a good portion of the property. And any other references, I'd like my husband to take over here.
I'm sorry, you probably should, approach the podium and state your name and address just for the record.
My name is Keith Kuchenbecker, 3040 Honeybee Lane, Oxford, Michigan, 48370. I absolutely love living where I live. We both do. It's freaking amazing. It's quiet. It's peaceful, which is exactly what we've needed for a far longer period of time than we've actually lived there. We bought the house in 2009 from the foreclosure. And we lived with parking in front of the house and walking up 8 steps to the next level up where the foundation is. It has a walkout basement, and then into the house. And my wife is a bus driver for Utica Schools, has been this year, 20th year coming up. And at 4:30 in the morning when she leaves, she's got to walk down the steps, clear off her car, so forth and so on. Now, nobody that's still alive gets any younger. And so this has really gotten to the point where I can no longer handle the guilt associated with the opportunity, if there was one, to put a garage so that my bride could have a dry car, no matter what the weather was doing. Now, on our property, there's a pretty severe variation in elevation. The west property line, I'm going to be general, the west property line is somewhere around 150 feet higher than the surface of the pond. And the distance between the west property line and the closest edge of the pond is roughly 280 feet. So it's a lot. It's a lot of, basically the property is flats out and then there's the house, which is built into the side of this big hill. And it's got the walkout basement, and you walk out the basement and then there's the pond. And the distance between the east edge of the house and the surface, the front edge of the pond is maybe 75 feet. Now, in the spring, because of where our house is located, we have runoff coming. We live between two hills on Hosner, and we're in the bottom of this hill. So we've got runoff coming from Hosner in both directions, plus we are a part of a 3-pond tributary that starts with a 10-acre, with a, I don't know, it's about a 2-acre pond, and then goes to my neighbor across the street, dumps into his when his gets too big, and then it flows into mine. So between the spring runoff and the tributary idea, we wind up with, in the spring, feet of water, 4 feet, sometimes 5 feet more water than we would have, let's say now, for instance. And so this completely eliminates the idea of putting a garage along the end of that, of the house on the east side of the house because of the water. I can't trust it. And I'm not spending $40,000 on anything I can't trust. Behind the house, if the front of the house looks at Honeybee Lane, directly behind the house, the entire backyard is flat for whatever flat there is, but it's the septic field, the whole thing. There's the functional septic field, and then there's the backup septic field, which I didn't even know existed. But there it is. And then it's, after the septic field, it immediately drops off about 8 feet and gradually runs into the pond. So the backyard is absolutely worthless. You can't put anything back there because of the septic field. Now, the only reason that this is happening at all, legitimately, is because when we bought it in 2009, we bought it for way less than the current market value. And when we went to apply for, to refinance the mortgage or find out what the houses were, found out that the property had tripled in value. Okay? So we were able to suck out on what I consider to be enough equity in the home to build a garage. Now, I'm not interested in building a garage where the vinyl siding is a different color than the house and the architectural manner of the garage is different. I want to put a garage there that is the same pitch as the house, the same mullions are in the windows, the same color scheme, it's the same. The idea here, for me and for my bride, is to, when the property is done, that both the house and the garage appear to have been built on the same day. There's no variation in architectural structure. This is my idea of high value, high quality investment. That's really what this is. Not only do we need a home on our property, but it is an investment in the property itself, not only for us, but for all of the people that come and live in the home following our exit from the home. Imagine a young mother that buys the property and she's got to walk up 8 steps and then go in the front door with the baby and a carriage. Not possible. This idea not only increases the tax base for you guys, or for the city, however you want to word it, it also provides what is rationally needed for the property. Now, my wife and I are prepared to spend $11,000 just to make the ground flat. We've already had the trees removed, that was $3,100. All right? And we've got quite a big area. You know, if the garage is 36 by 20, well, the space we cleared was, 50 by 50 kind of thing. Because I want to be able to walk all the way around the garage, the back side of the garage, on a 5-foot path. That way I can do any maintenance, upkeep. I have a little bit of control over the amount of snow that comes over the west side of that hill. And I can keep an eye on the foundation, that type of thing. So it's not going to be buried in the hill like the house. The other thing is that we have met all of the criteria concerning distance from the road, distance from the west property line. All of those criteria have been met and then some. I think the distance from the road, the farthest south most edge of the garage, which would be the end to Honeybee, is 95 feet to the center of Honeybee Road, Honeybee Lane. 80 feet is all that we need. And behind, we have some 30 feet of clearance from the back side of the garage, and we only need whatever it is. It's probably more than 30 feet, it's probably more like 40 feet. But that particular part of the property, it's the natural fence. It's woods. It's trees and brush and so forth. You couldn't walk through it right now if you wanted to. So we met all the criteria as far as, what we can concerning setback and so forth and so on. Now, the electrical and the gas and the cable and the electrical, gas, cable, the utilities are on you're looking at the front of the house, it would be on the west side of the house. They come immediately out, and the box is located towards the front. It's probably 3 feet behind the face of the front of the house on the west side. Once the cables for pipe leave the face of the house and move towards the road, they immediately turn east and head down and across the driveway. Now, the location of the garage is going to be, the face of the garage is going to be located it's going to be located in parallel with the left edge of the house, or the west edge of the house. So it's going to be like an L shape, like we see everywhere. And the cables and piping and all of that is actually going to be buried further underground because of this elevation drop that I spoke about when we have to walk up 8 steps to get to the flat where the garage is going to be. The garage and the house are going to be on the same plane, not an elevation change. We're just digging a big chunk out of a large hill. Some 200 yards has to be removed. So the electricity and the cable and the gas and the Meritech or AT&T, those cables are not even going to come into play. They are, the gas and the electricity are 28 inches in the ground, because I asked. And we may have to have a new cable for internet kind of thing run, because they said it was only 6 inches, but I watched them put it in the ground, and it, that machine. And the machine had a digger on the back of it like this, and so it could be 18 inches under the ground. So we don't really have any problems there. And I have to build this myself. So I was hoping to start this in June, because I gotta build a 720 square foot building by myself. And I gotta have that thing dry and covered to protect my money before the snow flies. And that's where I'm at. That's where we're at. Oh, the cement. I have a friend of mine who's been in business as a concrete guy. He did a building on our last house in Northern Sterling Heights, and he's just phenomenal. The guy knows so much about what he's doing. He cares so much about what he's doing that we are going to do the 42-inch footings, and then we're going to put an 8-inch block on top of the footings. The building will be mounted on top of that block, and then the floor of the garage will be put inside of that 8-inch block, and it will float separate from the foundation, which creates exceptional durability and stability. And I was not aware of this, as I learned from him when he suggested it. I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense. So, it cost me an extra $1,000, but it makes sense. It's logic. So, you know, I'm not chinsing on anything. This is a first-class operation all the way. The windows are first class. Double hung Anderson windows, just like ours. Everything is first class. I'm not screwing around, and this is no pole barn. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Do you have anything else to add? I gotta ask before I close the hearing.
Is there anyone else? Anybody else, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Smith, please approach.
That name is Ross Smith. My address is 3039 Huntington Lane. Keith approached me about building his garage when we first started about the idea. And, you know, I'm a firm believer we live on a suburban farm, 2.5 acres. I moved out here to be able to do what I want to do with my property and be able to make the space that I need to have a good living and do the things that I need to do. I have absolutely no problem with him building his barn. I live directly across the street from him. I will, yeah, in the summertime, I can't even see his house. So it really doesn't bother me. In the wintertime, I can see his house, and it still will not bother me. If I wanted to build a garage for what I needed, I would hope that somebody would feel the same way towards what I want. So, again, I have no problem with him building his garage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public with that comments? Okay, and hearing none, we'd like to close the public hearing at 6:21. Now, at this time, I believe the applicant can address the board for concerning questions or issues.
Yep, or the board can clarify anything it wants from the applicant, and then you can begin your deliberations and make your decision at the next meeting.
Do you have any questions for us?
I have no questions.
Or my fellow members have any questions for the applicant?
Okay, I have one question for Mr. Smith. We were given this contour map of the property. Thank you very much, helps a lot. Can you show me where your house is?
Yes.
You said it's across the street. I'm assuming it's that house there, but I don't want to assume.
Yep. Try to get a layout.
Here's Honeybee.
Okay. Yep, so...
So this is your
here's-
house?
Yep, so this is my house.
That's what I assumed. Just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
Yep.
The applicant answered part of my question, how long they've been there, apparently 9 years, if we got in 2009. In the 9 years that you've been there, have you contemplated any other resolve for this matter?
Can you rephrase the question?
I guess the polite way to be it, there's more than one way to skin a cat, so have you thought of any other way of doing this?
I have. And every time I have, it's either twice the money or the water comes into play.
Okay, that's my question.
So you believe you've narrowed it down to the only suitable
This-
location?
Yeah.
This is it. Well, I won't put any money into the property if I can't put the garage where I want to put it. Because it's not an investment then. It's a Band-Aid that no one will appreciate.
Okay.
Because we have looked and talked over things. We did put a deck on around the house because we had all these door walls, but it would drop off. So we had to put a deck. We love it. But even when we were doing that, we were contemplating, would it work? And it's just that the angles are just all around the house and the pond.
Thank you. I have one or two comments. There, just to clarify topography here. Looking at the topo map, the difference, change in elevation from that hill to your house is 6 feet. From that hill to the pond is 26 feet in difference. I think you might have meant traversely, it was 120 feet away or whatever, but not up and down 120 feet.
Actually, that is an old map. It is not correct.
This is right from Google.
Well, I understand all of that, but if you're suggesting that the hill is 6 feet tall on the west side of my house,
From the base of the house,
that is incorrect.
maybe 10 feet.
Yeah, 10 feet. So,
Okay.
oh, I know what that looks like.
Let's give you a...
Yeah. The property just steps down. The hole was cut out of the side of the hill to make room for the house.
Yep.
And you can, mow grass around the house, and then it takes a dramatic step down again, which is, it drops from the main floor. The lower level has 9.5-foot ceilings, and it's a walkout basement, so it goes from the main level of where you walk in, drops 9.5 feet, and then is a steady drop down to the pond. And the measurements that you have on that document are not measurements but where the pond is. They're measurements on ground. And over time, between the increase and decrease in pond value, the levels has degraded and increased the depth of the pond, and the water level raises and lowers.
Couple feet.
And sometimes 4 or 5 feet. And so the numbers that I'm talking about are from the surface of the water, not from the ground beside it. Because right now, today, the grass, which is adjoining the pond, is probably 4 feet higher than the water. Today, in April, they're touching. And in some springs, we have a dry dock that leans out into the water. In some years, the water is as much as 4 feet. The dock is buried. It's underwater as much as 4 feet. I've seen it walk out on the dock, and my knees are cut. Standing on the dock, but my knees are completely submerged.
Yeah, okay. So basically you're about 30 feet from the top of the pond to the top of that hill in height. My next question was, have you considered attaching, or can you or cannot attach the garage to the corner of that house?
And I'll tell you, that end of the house, I just spent $5,000 completely remodeling the master bathroom. which is at the front of the house on the west side. Immediately behind that is the master bedroom. So there is no functional way to attach the garage. I would love to have attached the garage. That would have been sweet. But that would have meant reconstructing and redesigning a part of the house that's completely functional already. I'm not a believer in tearing something apart just so that I can add something else. There's a bit of a problem realistically for me in doing that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Can I ask something?
Just sit.
Does anybody else have any comments? Or
Yeah, I have. When you bought the home 9 years ago, it is as is right now, or did any changes take place that you were not aware of when you bought it? In other words, the shape of the land, you say it's down in a bowl, more or less?
Well, yeah, but that's a huge, I'm speaking about, maybe, I don't know, 800 yards we're talking about,
Right.
where, there's a hill that just starts to go up south of Honeybee, and then it comes down and it goes flat across where my property is, and then it begins to go up again
Okay.
on the north side. So it's just a kind of a,
Yeah,
it just comes down, it's not, horrible or damaging or anything, it's just the reality of this property.
yeah, no, okay, yeah, thanks for the description. My point is, if you saw that when you originally bought the property and the house, correct?
We were interested in the property.
Yeah.
I mean, when we bought the house, there was no paint inside. It was prime. The Anderson window stickers were still on the windows. There were lights missing. The carpet upstairs was missing. The gutters were junk. There were a lot, you couldn't see the pond when we bought the property, couldn't see it because the bank that owned the property had come in with they'd hired a crew. Here's $40, go zip around and cut the grass. Well, they didn't get close to the pond, and so the weeds were 6 feet tall around the pond. You saw the property today, it's much, much, much different. So,
Okay, thank you.
Well, and that leads me to, it's been my practice after a public hearing, sometime between now and the next meeting, to come out and take a look. Does that be okay?
I don't care.
Okay, do you want to be there?
It doesn't matter to me. It's not going to change.
I'll call you and let you know when I'm coming.
That'd be good.
And we'll do that.
That'd be good.
It'll be just me.
Okay.
We can't do this as a group.
Very good.
In other words, we'll all like to visit the site, right down the road, obviously,
Yeah.
but we'll give you a courtesy package or a courtesy call before we show up.
All right.
But we're gonna, before I close the discussion, does anybody else have anything else to add or ask? Okay, in that case, then we'll close the discussion, and, as you know, there's no action today taken by this board. It'll be, the deliberation and the action will be taken and set up for August. I don't have the August date. Do you have the August 9th?
Yeah, it's something that you want to paper through.
I would have called August 9th, or our August meeting.
Second Tuesday.
And that's pretty much it. I think we're all set.
Yeah, all nine.
We're just going to be visiting the site between then and now. And we'll do this again next month. Okay?
Sounds good to me.
All right, thank you.
Can we leave?
Sure.
Beautiful.
Pretty nice day.
Thanks to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
I'd like to see that property.
Yeah.
Because I was looking here at the,
Okay, so next we're doing, where do they go? Here we go. Case 18-2. Applicant is James Drysdale. This is parcel address. The address is 171 Lakeview Drive, Oxford, Michigan. Parcel number is 05.31.451.014. Parcel estimated at 1.73 acres, zoned R1. Public hearing held on June 14th. The public hearing was held on June 14th. Just Once again, the applicant seeks a variance for the Township of Addison Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, Addison Township zoning ordinance, and the request is for a placement of accessory structure completely in the front yard setback relative to 4.21.3B. Secondly, also asking for 120 square feet variance to exceed the ground floor area of the principal building relative to 4.21.3C. Oh, these papers, I swear. Oh, here we go. 3, a 672 square foot variance for the floor area of an accessory structure. To go on and read the rest of these. Well, just I don't think I need to read the rest of this stuff, do I? Accessory building shall not be located in the front yard. Well, yeah, I will read the rest of these.
Yes.
This is all relative to the following, what I just stated. Article 4, Section 4.213B states that an accessory building shall not be located in the front yard. An accessory building located in the side yard shall meet the side yard setback requirements of the district in which the accessory building is located in. An accessory building located in the rear yard shall not be located closer than 5 feet to any property line. The other relative ordinance is 4.21.3C. An accessory building shall not exceed in total floor area the ground floor area of the principal building or structure on that lot, or the minimum floor area of the district in which it is located, whichever is greater. And third one, Article 8, Section 8.03, private garage not to exceed the greater of 800 square feet or 50% of the total floor area of the principal dwelling unit, not including the area of the garage, if it is attached. In no event shall the area exceed 1,200 square feet. Okay. The only correspondence I have, I think I have 2. Would I want to read this? Should I read this out?
They're short, yeah.
We just had, let me tell you this, that there's, we have this letter from Diane Heckman. I'm a property owner up in Indian Lake, just down the street from the proposed variance request. In view of what Mr. Drysdale is seeking, I am strongly opposed to granting his request. The property owners on Lakeview and Kennard have always maintained a front yard of trees and plantings to keep an open field to the area. No one on the street has ever built what amounts to be a pole barn or any of the lake properties. I've been advised that Mr. Drysdale already has a garage, so additional structure is not in keeping with the area, nor is it what was envisioned by the ones who platted our subdivision. I am not sure what is intended for the proposed building, but I, for one, and other neighbors that I have talked to on the street do not want to set a precedent to be set that kind of structure on the lake properties. We have chosen to live here because of the country feel for our area. Diane Heckman. The second one is, I think, this is from Don King at 162 Lakeview Drive. It says, please be advised that I have reviewed the applicant's request and proposed site plan for which the request is made. Based on this site plan with the building shielded from my view at 162 Lakeview, I approve the requested variances. Any deviation of this site plan would require another approval. Don King. Okay? That's that. The public hearing is closed. And I'd just like to ask the applicant if he would like to approach and any further comments or questions?
I really don't have any other comments. I can compromise on anything the board would give me. The place where the garage is going to be is clear. I think you visited, and I think Mr. Tony visited, and Mr. Tony spent some time.
I would have knocked if you were home. I didn't know you were home.
I'm
Or you got a camera?
I'm only there to play.
Oh,
I've been really ill, so now I got my health. I have to make decisions when I get in this little place because I'm downsizing. Ages and stages of retired now for 5 years. I got good health, and it's just time to do something rather than living in the woods of Metamora and doing a lot of extra work. Mr. Tony was there. I walked him through the whole property and everything, and I believe he was very cooperative and listening to me and suggested a few things here and there. But that's that time of my life. I'm a single man. It's just time for me to step down from a big house. I've never really heard anything other than Miss Diane complain about it. I've been to Mr. Richards, a couple other neighbors, and they said, go for it, champ, go for it. The only real complaint that I got is different dogs that attack me and my dog. But other than that, I can compromise in size and everything. I figured I'd just try to see what I can do. And that's about it. I need hobbies, I need interests, I need things to do as a retired. If I just sit around and do nothing, then I'm in trouble. So, I want to store all my stuff in the wintertime. I want to put it all in there. I do the Metamora house, and I'll do it at the lake house. I enjoy the lake house living. It's the first time I'll be living on the lake. So it's going to be new to me, but I have to have a garage and I have to have things to do. So if anybody can help me compromise, and I can compromise myself. Or give me other suggestions, I'm open for that too.
okay.
Okay?
Fair enough, thank you. Does the board have any comments or questions?
I'd like somebody to expand on his statement that he can compromise.
You would like me to expand on my compromise?
Well, you mentioned it, but you don't
Well,
mention what you
I just caught that he said 800 foot, 1,200 foot. Because it is a tiny house, I am going to revamp the whole house. I explained to Mr. Tony what I see in the future. Compromise, whatever I can get. I know I applied for 1,472 feet. Doug, the code enforcement officer, and I have been going through this for about a year and a half. And it was his suggestion. He says, let's give it to the board, let's see what you can get, and work with the board of directors. And I says, okay. So it's been over a year and a half that Doug and I have been working on it. We started in March of 17. I did talk to Miss Sherry before she retired on 7/17 of 17. She did, before I bought the property 4 years ago, she says, yeah, I can kind of see the garage. So it kind of reassured me that the way I was being ill, that the little house would be perfect for me. Never did I ever expect to have this cleared out.
Did I answer your question, Mr. Smith?
Yeah. That's as far as you want to explain, yes.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add or ask? I'd like to entertain a motion if somebody has anything.
I'll make a motion. Just remember, board, that any motion you make needs to be supported by the record and reference to the record. Try to draw upon your wisdom gained from the public hearing and from your reviews to articulate a motion that is as factual based as you can to support the motion.
Okay, having said that, yeah, my motion would be to deny the variance based on the record presented. Starting off with, on the record in the public hearing that we had last time, the question was asked about the house being updated in order to increase the square footage in order to meet requirements for outbuildings and that kind of thing. And it sounded like it was 10 years out, but there's no real plans, so I don't think we can base anything on something revising. It's like putting the cart before the horse. So again, we have to, that's on the record, that's what we heard. Also in the public hearing, we heard from a Bill Retzko, who lives right next door, who felt that it would be a bad impact on the residential flavor in that neighborhood. And that, to me, goes to the guidelines that does it affect other neighbors? Does this set a precedence? So there was someone there in the area that did not think that that would fit. Also, on the record, in the last meeting, we talked about a number of trees that are currently there hiding this building. Someday those trees will be gone, and that's what that neighbor was really worried about. Somewhere down the road, trees are gone, you have a building out there. These are all facts from the last public hearing. Yeah, and lastly, I would say if we would grant this variance, it would be a special privilege that other residents would not have. And again, that would, in my opinion, that's for all the reasons I just stated, that's why I would make a motion to deny the variance.
Any questions?
No, not well, motion.
I'll support the motion.
We have a motion and support for denial of the variance. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Tony Spina,
Okay, so just to be clear, yes means no,
Correct.
right? Okay, yes.
Yes, you agree with me?
Yes, I agree with the motion.
Vice Chair Smith,
I say yes to deny the applicant.
Robert DeWitt,
Yes.
Eric Sepp,
Yes.
Chair Hayward.
Yes. The variance has been denied. Apologize, I'm sorry, but
I don't think it was Bill that talked about the trees.
well, we have that on record of somebody talking about trees. I do have it on my notes. Radco opposed.
Yeah, gets in the minutes.
There's just a couple too many things going against you, hypotheticals.
That's okay.
Hypothetically, you're going to attach the garage, maybe attach the garage, maybe they'll expand the garage.
That's why I was saying about compromising interior.
Yeah.
So you would say attach the garage and then go from there. Do have
I
to come
can't
back-
tell you that, but you
No, I
can
know
explore
that.
that with
Do I have to come back to here or do I just go to?
Start with Doug again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on. Correspondence received. Personally, I have none. Nope. And zoning board reports. I have none. Report of Planning Commission liaison, Mr. Smith.
Things are quite quiet, not much going on. I presume that if the decision of the judge last week does something, we'll probably have some, and it proceeds as the township is on the plus side, we'll probably have some things to do about site plans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for the tower. Is that correct?
Yeah, the planning commission has already conducted the special use hearing.
Yep.
The matter would come back to the planning commission for its decision along with the site plan, and then the site plan would go to the township board for final approval.
That's why I say we will probably have some business going on about the tower,
The
right?
decision of the planning commission on the special use aspect is final.
That's been done, yes.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of their site plan being approved by the township, is that correct?
No, you held the public hearing on the special use.
Okay.
You didn't reach a decision.
Oh, because of the second hearing about the falling of the tower.
Correct, so.
Okay, so the judge made us have a second hearing.
Right.
Now we have to say yes or no.
The planning commission will have to vote yes or no on the special use.
Yes, okay.
Request.
I get it.
Right.
Okay. All right, well, that's the report.
Okay, thank you. This time we'd like to open the public forum for anybody that would like to.
There's only one left.
It's just me.
Mr. Sergeant.
Well, thank you.
Chuck Sargent, 552 Deer Point. I listened to the two petitions this evening, and what comes to my mind is that the land use ordinance is crystal clear. Zero ambiguity. I think the land use ordinance existing, land use master plan, both go to word definition. And when we read the ordinance, attention is directed to the words shall not. We go back to the township code and look at the definition of wording. Shall not. There is no room whatsoever for movement. Absolutely not. I appreciate considering the petitioner's request, but I question why it was even addressed.
Let me respond to that. It's a good question. Every ordinance in your books is cloaked with a presumption of validity, and all ordinances are generally prohibitive and do contain the word shall. But the nature of a variance is what's at issue before this board, and it's why I always tell this board why their job is so important. Because what you're in a sense doing when you're on a ZBA is you're taking the shall standard that you are correct on, and you're saying, given the circumstances presented this time, we need to deviate from the shall. A variance, by its definition, is a deviations from the shall standard. The shall standard is there and applies. The only way around the shall standard is by way of a variance, which by its nature is a deviation from the ordinance.
Is my famous statement still true?
You've had so many.
When people say, what is the ZBA all about? And I say, the ZBA allows you to do what the law says you can't.
Your statement remains true.
That's it.
Yes.
And if I
Plain and simple.
Yes.
And if I can reiterate to this too, is that in a perfect world, in a perfect model of a square rectangle piece of land, flat, blah, blah, blah.
No irregularities, no peculiarities.
Then that shall not applies, crystal clear.
Yes.
But when you have to see if there's validity to hardship, practical difficulty, or whatever you want to call it, can't be money, can't be the things that are obvious on our bylaws. That's where we take the shall not and try to see if there's any
variance,
any relief that,
Yes.
that makes sense without hurting, injurious to neighbors, community, health, etc.
Also public interest.
Now, the first case tonight,
Yes.
I don't know if the gentleman had any coaching or whatnot, or if he should have coaching. There was a lot of talk about money.
Which one in one ear out the other?
and money is
I appreciate that, but that is not a consideration of this board, is that correct?
no. The presentation on the land topography was more valuable than the money issues.
Yeah, the money is not.
Money
an
is
issue.
irrelevant.
Is that correct? The money's not an issue?
That's correct.
That's correct.
I think what's being raised, though, is a good point, is that, we talked about this in our training.
Yes.
Is that you are the only appellate relief valve from the strict application of the ordinance. In other words, as we walk and talk on a daily basis, he's correct. The shall standard applies. You shall not, you shall, here's the dimensions, here's not in the rear, no, not in the front, only in the rear yards. They're all governed by shall standards. That's why the court system requires you to have a factual finding.
Right.
And now you see the importance as we gel this conversation. It's important that the reviewing court hear the basis of why you decided that the ordinance in this case should not be subject to the shall standard. And that's why I always try to teach, and I try to remind you that building the record to deny or building the record to grant a variance is equally as important. It's not easier to deny and it's not easier to grant. They're both important. But the factual basis as we know by the case law now, and as you know, I preach on this all the time, is that the courts now want to see the embodiment of your findings in your motion. It used to be, not too many years ago, and certainly, you know, while you were around, Mr. Smith, is you could just say, for all the reasons stated in this record, I hereby move to approve the variance. Now, courts started not liking that. They want to know what those reasons are, what forms the basis. So, you know, my daughter called me the other night and was in a millennial rage, trying to figure out what's going on with this Supreme Court thing, Dad. I mean, what's the deal here? Why is it so important, and why are we so concerned? And you know, I said you have to look at it like this. That nominee is important because the legislators, which is your boards and your planning commission, they just throw the pitches. The ZBA and the court system calls the balls and the strikes, and that's what you're doing. You know, the law is set. Every time a variance comes to you, the law is concrete. You read them. Shall be in the rear yard. And yet here we are listening to testimony as to why I should be in the front yard. And Mr. Sargent's he's raising a good point. He says, if it says shall, why are we even talking about it? Right? That's your point. Why are we talking about it? Because that's your job.
So consequently, the only time that the shall word should really be considered at meetings is here.
Well, the shall word accompanies every ordinance. I mean, every ordinance is cloaked with a shall standard.
Well, like he said, shall sets the standard. There's no variance. So shall should only be talked about here,
right,
where we listen and decide that maybe it needs a variance.
Right. The planning commission, for example, you're the liaison of the planning commission. If there's a requirement in the rules for a site plan, you really at the planning commission don't have a lot of latitude to deviate.
It says you shall plant 10 trees, and that's what it means.
Then you shall.
That's right.
And the planning commission doesn't have the authority to grant 8.
But this board does.
Yes. There we go. Does that help a little or not?
Yes.
Probably.
Well, I knew the answer before I was just stating.
Most of the time you do.
It's a devil's advocate.
But I think it's good to revisit that once in a while because I think it's an important concept. You know, this is the judiciary.
Yes.
Planning commission functions as Congress. I guess Pearson is Trump.
I actually like that. That's
Yeah. Bruce might like that, I don't know.
And there's another point that I would like to make, and I think that perhaps everyone here understands that we have the land use ordinance, then we have a Lake District overlay.
Correct.
Which trumps land use.
Correct, and lays another layer of review on the variance process.
Yes.
Agreed.
good. Now, is it also not correct that before somebody can come here with an appeal, they have to have been turned down?
They have to have,
Otherwise, there's nothing to appeal.
well, there has to be, they have to,
Building official.
the building official has had to advise them, you can't do that without a variance. You know, and then I'll just get one thing out while we're talking, because Judge O'Brien, the judge we happen to have in your variance involving Verizon, is a very thorough, thoughtful judge. And if you were ever before him, you would get that sense. And he raised a good point with me. He said, you know, Mr. Davis, at some point in your ordinance scheme, when the variance becomes the norm, it's time to change the ordinance. So we've talked about that, and you and I have talked about that with respect to setbacks.
Yes.
And we had, Mr. Sargent and I have had great conversations. He's a great thinker, because at some point when you find yourself granting the same variance over and over again, it's time to change the ordinance.
That got something to do with front yard, backyard, and lake lots?
We'll talk about that someday.
I was just going to get to that.
Should, yeah.
But did you see what I'm saying? But routinely you have, like, for example, you have ordinances that require this much space, and we're routinely allowing this much.
No, I know.
You know what I'm saying, on anything.
Yeah.
The septic setbacks, for years, we were hearing requests and we were saying, makes sense, and now you guys have had the wisdom to look at that language and say, why are we having these ZBA hearings when we could just say, if you can demonstrate, alternatives, why are we bothering the ZBA with all these questions? So it's another point, and as we're talking about the new Supreme Court nominee and precedent and all that other stuff, it becomes important that you remember you're the relief valve. You're not the setter of the standard, you're the deviation from the standards, so.
Hey, I've often said that when people ask about this board, that we are the Supreme Court. But we can be asked for, what do they call it, when you don't like the decision,
Appeals. I mean.
you appeal it.
Yeah.
Right.
Can the United States Supreme Court decision be appealed?
No, nowhere to go.
It can be, you can ask for a reconsideration,
Well, it's the same thing.
but you cannot, there's no further body to go to.
No, I agree with that. There's no further body.
The only,
But unlike our body, you can go to circuit court.
correct.
But
And
that's
you-
the end, right?
And you're the last level
In the township.
in the township before the circuit court.
So you can ask for an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court or ask a rehearing?
You could seek a rehearing, and certainly later on in the years, you could seek to overturn the precedent with a different case, but that's the law of the land. That's why the nominees are so important.
I'm not that keen on the civil court. Does anything go to civil court or not? The jurisdiction you need to...
The Supreme Court ends up hearing also criminal matters that are of criminal importance.
Is civil court, Supreme Court?
The Supreme Court is the highest appellate court.
Yeah, and then civil circuit.
Then you have, underneath the U.S. Supreme Court, you have the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. Then you have the federal district courts. Then you go to the state level and you have the Michigan Supreme Court, the Michigan Circuit Courts, and the Michigan District Courts, along with the probate courts.
Gotcha, thanks.
All right, that's enough.
That's enough? All right.
Too much knowledge in one night.
Right. All right, well,
Motion to adjourn.
I'd like the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're done.
Thank you. But there has been a lot of... Oh, yeah, we're going to vote.
Yeah.
Motion to
All in
adjourn.
favor?
You just need a vote.
Aye.
What the minutes,
Aye.